Welcome to the video solutions for the Edexcel Functional Skills English Level 2 Writing Practice Paper 3. In this video we will go through the questions and you can get a better idea of what you want your answers to look like, as well as what to look out for when planning your answers. So during your writing exam you'll be assessed on these criteria here, including punctuation, using correct grammar, spelling words correctly, including specialist words, communicating your information, ideas and opinions clearly, coherently and effectively so that your writing makes sense, writing using an appropriate level of detail and making sure that your writing is an appropriate length, organising writing for different purposes, using formatting and structure, so you want to be thinking about organisational features, conveying clear meaning and establishing cohesion using organisational markers, so that means connecting your ideas together, using different language and register that is suited to audience and purpose. So you need to be considering the audience and purpose of the text and using language that is appropriate for that audience and purpose. And finally, constructing complex sentences consistently and accurately and using paragraphs where they are appropriate. Task 1. You have been asked to write a report for the council about a shopping area near you. The council wants to know about the positives and negatives of the shopping area. Positives could include the range of shops and good transport links, and negatives could include the number of shoppers declining and shops closing down. Your report should include sections on the shopping area, its positives and negatives, and any changes you would recommend. Your task is to write a report for the council about the shopping area, and in your report you should describe the shopping area, outline its positives and negatives, and explain the changes you would recommend. You should aim to write about 250 to 300 words. So in this question, we are writing a report. That is our text type, and our audience is the council. The topic that we're focusing on is a shopping area that is near us. And we need to consider the positives and negatives. And we've got some examples of positives and negatives here that we could consider. And then we need to divide our report into different sections. So there's a number of ways we could do this. We could use subheadings or paragraphs, for example. We could even use text boxes to divide up the different sections. Let's take a look at an example answer for this question. So, Highfield Park Shopping Centre. This report will examine the positive and negative aspects of Highfield Park Shopping Centre and will suggest some changes that could be made to improve the shopping experience of visitors. Positives. The shopping centre is in a central location and is next to Highfield Park, so shoppers can enjoy fresh air and greenery at their convenience. There are a range of shops selling gifts, clothing, toys, books and video games, so the shopping centre appeals to a wide range of people with different interests. The shopping centre is easily accessible as the 24 bus goes directly from the town centre to the Highfield area in just 10 minutes. Negatives. The shopping centre is not particularly well maintained and littering has become a problem due to the lack of janitors and litter bins. Several of the restaurants in the shopping centre have closed recently, so it's difficult for people to spend the day there due to a lack of catering options. Some sections of the shopping centre have not been renovated for several years and contain outdated decor. Recommended changes. The shopping centre should apply for government funding in order to ensure that shoppers have a positive experience and keep high street shops running. Investments should primarily be used to address the littering issues in the shopping centre, as this presents a health and safety problem as well as deterring shoppers. Any surplus funding should be used to invest in restaurants and renovate areas of the centre which are in need of updating. This will create an inviting area and provide food and drink options that will make shoppers feel relaxed, happy and comfortable. So now we're going to use different parts of the mark scheme to explore why this answer is very good and would get high marks in the exam. So let's start with looking at the punctuation. Every single sentence within the report starts with a capital letter and ends with a full stop. So even when we're using bullet points, we need to make sure that all of our sentences are accurate. So we're starting with a capital letter and full stop for each one. We also need to be using capital letters for official names. So for example, Highfield Park Shopping Centre, that is a proper noun because it is a place. So we need to be using capital letters for that. What other punctuation have we got here? Well, we have a colon to create a list of positives and negatives, and then to explain the recommended changes. So you should use colons at the start of lists. We've also got commas throughout the answer. These are to add additional information and ideas to sentences. So for example, the shopping centre is in a central location. And then we've added the idea with a comma here that it is next to Highfield Park. And then we've used another comma before explaining that this means that shoppers can enjoy fresh air and greenery. So dividing up different parts of the sentence there, different ideas within the same sentence. So you could try and be a bit more ambitious with your punctuation, try to include a range of different punctuation in there, but making sure that you're using capital letters, full stops and commas effectively are the main points you need to be thinking about for your exam. You also need to consider your spelling and grammar. So in this answer, we know that it is grammatically correct. That means that all the sentences are accurate and they all make sense on their own. So we've read through the answer, and it's a really good idea to try to read practice answers out loud yourself, or in your exam, imagine someone reading out your answer, just to see if everything makes sense. You could even give your practice answers to a friend so that they can read through and see if there are any sentences that don't make any sense, just to make sure that your grammar is accurate. Now, the spelling in this answer is also accurate throughout, and we've got some quite difficult words that have been spelled correctly here. For example, we've got accessible, and we've got well maintained, and then we have restaurants as well. So try to include any specialist words, any words that might be a little bit longer or trickier to spell, just to show that you have a really good control of spelling. If you struggle with spelling, then just focus on trying to spell simple words correctly, because spelling is a really important part of your writing. It really helps to make sure that the writing is clear and makes sense. So now we've considered spelling, punctuation and grammar, and those three aspects make up 42% of your marks, so quite a significant chunk of the marks there. So make sure you practice, practice, practice. Now we'll have a look at the composition of the answer, so how it's laid out and what the content of the answer is. So to start with, we need to see if the answer is clear. So as we said before, you could read through the answer in your head, see if everything makes sense to you and would make sense to somebody else as well. The answer is also an appropriate detail and length. So when we're considering what details to include, we should always be referring to the question and looking at the bullet points here for ideas. So here we've described the shopping centre. They've said that there are a range of shops there, it's in a central location, it's easily accessible, it's not particularly well maintained, and several of the restaurants have closed. So we've given a description of the shopping centre there. We've outlined positives and negatives, really effectively using these subheadings. And we've got an explanation of the changes that would be recommended using this final subheading here. And these are not just stated but also explained. So they haven't just said that the centre should apply for government funding, they've also explained that this will help shoppers have a positive experience and keep the high street shops running. So that's an explanation there. So overall, we're using relevant details based on the question. So when you're planning your answer, make sure that you are thinking about the different bullet points in the question and really considering different things that you could include, and then structure your answer so that you are hitting all of those points and fully answering the question, including extra detail. Your answer will also need to be the right length, so have a look at the question and see if there's a word count. Here we've been asked to write between 250 and 300 words, and in this answer there are 276 words, so that definitely falls within that word count there. Practicing questions will give you a really good idea of what it looks like to write 250 or 300 words, and if you are practicing counting out your words before your exam, then during the exam you'll have a good idea of what it looks like. You won't need to be wasting time counting words in the exam. Based on the marking criteria, we also know that our answers will have to be formatted and organised appropriately. So we need to use organisational features that are going to make our writing really clear for the reader. So because we have been asked to write a report, we need to be thinking about what organisational features we need for a report. Now, every report needs a heading, and we have that at the top there. So make sure that if you've been asked to write a report, you have a heading at the top to summarise what the report is about. We've also got some subheadings here. Now, you don't have to use these, but they are really helpful in structuring a report and breaking down the different ideas included in there. And we also need to be including a range of facts and opinions within our report in a sort of impersonal way. So we're not talking about ourselves at all, we're not using the word I to specify that it's our opinions, we're just explaining what the centre is like and then making some suggestions. So giving some opinions at the end there. You also need to make sure that you are using paragraphs to structure your answer. So we have a paragraph up here and then this bullet point section acting like a paragraph there, another one here, and then a final one here. So really try to break up your answers and make them easier for the reader to navigate. Your answers should also be cohesive. So that means that you are using organisational markers, otherwise known as connectives or conjunctives, like and, but, or so, and also using punctuation such as commas. These are really helpful to link your sentences together and to join up all of your ideas so that your answers can flow effectively. So for example, we've got lots of connective words and punctuation throughout this answer. So we've got, for example, we've got a comma here and we've got the connective as, and then we've got a comma here and the connective so to give an explanation. and a comma here, and to add additional information. So rather than just writing really short sentences that don't really match up together, you've got to make sure that you're trying to make longer sentences to join ideas onto one another. This will help you to make your answer cohesive. The way that you order your answer is also really important in ensuring that you can achieve some cohesion. So here we have a bit of an introduction, which is a really good way to start off, saying what the report will examine. Then we move on to talking about the positives. So we're following the structure of the question here. We've got description and we've got positives so far. And then we talk about the negatives. So it's following in a logical order so far. And then right at the end, we have recommended changes. So these are based on the positives and negatives that we've already talked about, and it makes sense that they would go at the end. So we've got a really great structure, a well-organised text, and it's really cohesive. Now let's think about the kinds of language that we're using within the answer. So your language and register have to have the right kind of tone and style to match up with the reader that you're aiming at and the purpose of the text as well. So our audience and purpose can be found in the question. So make sure that you're constantly referring back to the question to make sure that your answer is lining up with what you've been asked. So we're writing a report for the council. So because we're writing for the council, quite a professional group of people, we want to use formal language. We don't want to be using any slang or any contractions like can't or won't. We're also writing a report about the shopping centre, including positives and negatives. So we're focusing on positives and negatives. That is the main purpose of the report. And we're also looking at changes to recommend. So there are two purposes: to examine positives and negatives and to recommend changes. So we've definitely met our purpose because we have positives, we've got negatives, and we have recommended changes. We've also met the audience quite well because we're writing to the council, we're using formal language. So this report will examine the positive and negative aspects of the centre and will suggest some changes that could be made to improve the shopping experience of visitors. We've got some quite sophisticated language in there. We're using standard English that has no slang, no informal language or contractions. So our answer is very appropriate to the audience and it fits the purpose really well. Finally, make sure that you're trying to use some longer, more complicated sentences that join multiple ideas together. So for example, we've got several of the restaurants in the shopping centre have closed recently. And then we've got a comma to separate out the next clause of the sentence, so to add some additional information. And we've got the connective word so there, and that has been used to show that we're now going to provide a little bit more explanation. So what is the effect of this? What is the effect of several restaurants closing? Well, the effect is that it is difficult for people to spend the day there. Why? Why is it difficult to spend the day there? We've got this connective phrase due to, and that is going to signify to the examiner that you're giving a reason why. So due to a lack of catering options. So we've got several parts of the sentence there to provide additional explanations. Make sure that you are using commas and you're using connective words to link your own parts of sentences together and to build on your ideas. So overall, this is a fantastic answer because it gives a really appropriate response to the question. It addresses the audience and purpose that have been specified, the council, and we're trying to find positives and negatives and recommend changes. We've definitely followed the correct formatting, organisational features for a report, and we've used appropriate impersonal language that you need for a report as well. The language is very formal because we're writing for the council, and paragraphs have been used really effectively to make the answer cohesive and to break up ideas to make them easier for the reader to read. We've got correct spelling throughout, and a range of punctuation has been used effectively. So overall, the answer makes sense, it flows really effectively, and it gains very high marks. So when you're trying to write your own answer to this question, make sure that you're considering using a range of punctuation and make sure that you know how to do that accurately. Focus on your spelling especially, and most importantly, make sure your answer is really, really clear. It's a really good idea to try and plan your answers first because that will help you to organise it effectively and to generate some ideas so that you don't run out of details and your answer isn't too short and doesn't meet the word count. Try to get really creative and enjoy writing. Now let's take a look at the second task. So the information we've been given in this box here is from a forum and the website is Have Your Say About Young People. So Anna says, most young people are lazy and obsessed with technology. They are always on their mobiles, they don't think of other people. When they do go out, they just cause trouble and disturb others. And Lee says, I know many people who aren't lazy at all. They want to do well at school or college and use technology for study and work. They take part in charity activities and help out at the home and in the community. So your task is to write a contribution to the web forum giving your views on young people. In your contribution, you should respond to Anna and Lee's views on young people and explain in detail your own opinions about young people. You should aim to write about 200 to 250 words. So the context here that we've been given, these comments from Anna and Lee are really important because we have to respond to their views. So when we're responding to their views, we have to consider what their views are and what we agree with and disagree with and why. So Anna is saying that most people are lazy and they're obsessed with technology when they're young. And they don't think of other people, they cause trouble, they disturb people. So she has quite a negative view. Whereas Lee has a very positive view, says that they're not lazy, they're using technology effectively for study and work, and they are doing things to help out in their communities. So we have to make a decision on who we agree with. We could give quite a balanced argument and then come to a conclusion. And then we have to give explanation for our sort of reasoning for why we think that young people are either lazy and obsessed with technology or not lazy and use technology really well. And we've got 200 to 250 words to do this. It's helpful that we have this web forum in front of us because it gives us a really good idea of what our contribution should be like, because we're writing a contribution just like Anna and Lee's, but ours will have to be considerably longer. So now let's take a look at a model answer for this question. Daryl, I think that technology, especially mobile phones, can hinder young people's development and make them more self-centred. Many teenagers stare at their phones for several hours a day rather than making real-life connections and learning how to interact with others effectively. I know more than a few young people who struggle with social anxiety, and I think that the rapidly increasing mental health epidemic is largely due to the overuse of social media. On the other hand, I can see the benefits of technology for young people. The internet provides them with a window to the world like no other. They do not have to rely on dusty old books. They can find immediate answers to questions and learn so much about the world around them with just a click. Furthermore, I certainly do not believe that most young people are lazy. In fact, young people might be working harder than ever before. Smoking and alcohol use among 18 to 25-year-olds is at an all-time low, and many young people now strive to enrich their minds by attending colleges and universities. It cannot be denied that a large number of young people do not want to endure long hours of physical labour in hospitality jobs anymore, but that is not due to laziness. They simply do not want to be exploited. Minimum wage can barely support anyone during the cost of living crisis, and I do not think that young people should be blamed for avoiding what is essentially slave labour. So now let's see how this answer meets the marking criteria. And we'll start once again with punctuation. So the answer uses capital letters and full stops throughout. So at the start of every sentence we have a capital letter, and at the end we have a full stop. We've also got capitals used for the word I. Remember that every time you use I, it should be capitalised. And we have a capital letter for this proper noun at the top here, the name of someone, Daryl. We've also got a range of punctuation including commas. So commas have been used to add new ideas to sentences. So for example, I know more than a few young people who struggle with social anxiety, and we've used a comma there to add an idea that the mental health epidemic has resulted from that. We've also got a possessive apostrophe used here. You need to make sure that you know how to use apostrophes correctly. So development belongs to the people, the young people. So we've used an apostrophe there. We've also got a hyphen to join two words together in real life to create one word. And we've got one of those again in self-centered and rapidly increasing as well. So quite a few examples of hyphens being used. And then we have hyphens used towards the end as well. So a range of punctuation has been used correctly and effectively. We've also got a semicolon that's been used there. They don't have to rely on dusty old books, they can find immediate answers. So if you don't know how to use a semicolon, that is fine. You should only try to use punctuation that you know how to use effectively and accurately. But the most important things to consider are using capital letters, full stops and commas correctly. Next, let's think about the grammar. So your sentences will need to be accurate and make sense on their own. And we know that all of these sentences are accurate and make sense because we have read through the answer and everything was crystal clear. There were no mistakes in the sentences. The spelling is also accurate throughout. You need to try to spell words correctly, and if you can, try to use some longer words, some more sophisticated words that might be trickier to spell. So, for example, we've got immediate being used here. We've got furthermore, and we have laziness, also quite a tricky word to spell. So make sure that you practice your spelling before the exam because it's really important that you're spelling words correctly. As well as ensuring that your spelling, punctuation and grammar are consistently accurate, you will have to make sure that you're addressing any word counts in the question and writing the appropriate amount of words. So in this question, we've been asked to write 250 to 300 words, and we know that that's a very important part of the question because it's been written in bold, and you can lose marks for writing too little or too much. So make sure that your answers are the appropriate length for the question. It's also important that you are using appropriate details that are matched up to the question. So this answer is using details that address every single bullet point in the question. We're responding to Anna and Lee's views on young people because we are explaining technology, one of the things that they both mention. So we've got technology mentioned by Anna and technology mentioned by Lee. We're talking about laziness as well. I certainly do not believe that most young people are lazy. And Anna and Lee both talk about that as well. So we've definitely addressed Anna and Lee's views. And then we need to explain in detail your own opinions about young people. So we've used lots of details in this answer to support our opinions and make them more persuasive. So for example, this person has made up a fact saying smoking and alcohol use among 18 to 25-year-olds is at an all-time low. So you can make up as many facts and statistics as you like throughout your answer, and you can add in quotes from people. You can get really creative with it just to add as many details as possible that are going to support your answer and make it more detailed and interesting. So overall, it's got relevant detail and it's an appropriate length. Now let's think about the formatting and organisation of the answer. So whenever we think about formatting, we need to consider what text type we are writing. And it will tell us this in the question. So one of the first things you should do when you read the question is identify the text type. Our text type is a contribution to this web forum. And we've been shown here what those look like and what we should do in them. So we've got the name of a person and then they've explained their opinions below. So here we've done exactly the same thing. We've got on the web forum, we've got a name and then an explanation of opinions. Now it's also really important to remember that you need to use paragraphs in all of your answers. Paragraphs will help you to break up information, make it easier to read and more organised. So here we have a range of paragraphs all about slightly different topics. So the first paragraph, we've got the topic has been introduced and some social concerns have been brought up and addressed there. In the second paragraph, they're talking about technology and how that can be used for learning. In the third paragraph, they give opinions on whether young people are lazy or not. And then finally, we have this linked paragraph that supports the previous one about the lack of laziness among young people. And then we've also got the introduction of an issue of cost and explaining why young people might appear lazy to some people because they are avoiding certain jobs that are really ill paid. So overall, this is really well structured. We've got lots of different paragraphs, each talking about a slightly different aspect of the topic of young people. Another one of the marking criteria that you'll be assessed on is cohesion. So we need to link up our sentences and join up our ideas within our paragraphs, make sure that everything is cohesive and it flows. So, for example, in the first paragraph, we begin with an opinion. I think that technology can hinder young people's development and make them more self-centred. So we're talking about technology, especially mobile phones, and how it's negative. And then in the second sentence, we follow on from this really effectively. So we say, many teenagers stare at their phones for several hours. So we're linking to that previous sentence, talking about phones. Several hours a day, rather than making real-life connections and learning how to interact with others effectively. I know more than a few young people who struggle with social anxiety. So here we're linking to the previous sentence again, because we're saying young people don't know how to interact with others, and then we're saying that they have social anxiety. So two very similar ideas, linking sentences together. So overall, this paragraph is really cohesive and works well. And then it's joined up onto the next paragraph with this phrase, on the other hand, this connective. So they go on to talk about the benefits of technology when they've just talked about the drawbacks of technology for young people. So linking the paragraphs together really effectively there and making the answer cohesive overall. Now let's think about the language use within the answer. So your writing needs to have the right kind of tone and style to be appropriate for the audience and purpose. So our audience in this case is everyone on the forum, so people like Anna and Lee, who are talking about young people and want to have their say. And because we are writing a contribution, we are giving our views, we are giving opinions. And we probably want to do this quite persuasively to make people agree with our arguments. So it's appropriate for the purpose of the text because forums are designed to show people's opinions, and that's definitely done here. Each paragraph gives some opinions supported by facts. So we've got these phrases like, I think that, and I can see the benefits. And then I certainly do not believe that. It cannot be denied that. So throughout the answer, we are giving opinions. We've also got evidence to back up these opinions. So for example, in fact, young people might be working harder than ever before. Smoking and alcohol use is at an all-time low. And many young people strive to enrich their minds by attending colleges and universities. So each paragraph giving opinions and supporting them with facts. How is this answer suited to the audience? Well, because we're writing for that general audience of forum posters, we don't use direct address to speak to anyone in this answer, but we could address either Anna or Lee directly by name when we're talking about their opinions. It's appropriate for the forum because it is somewhat formal, but not completely formal overall. We've got lots of persuasive language in here. For example, we've got facts about the smoking and alcohol use, and we've also got the use of hyperbole at the end, so an exaggeration by saying that young people are avoiding these hospitality jobs that are essentially slave labour. So trying to persuade the audience that young people are not lazy, they simply do not want to be exploited. So overall, we're really matching the purpose because we are persuading a general audience of forum posters that our opinions are correct. Finally, you need to be using compound sentences in your answers. So try to use connective words or commas to join multiple ideas together within the same sentence. This will help you to have a variety of sentences, including longer sentences. So in this answer, we have many teenagers stare at their phones for several hours a day rather than making real-life connections and learning how to interact with others effectively. Now we've got several ideas that have been included here. We've got a fact saying many teenagers are staring at their phones for several hours. And then we have this phrase here to create a contrast, so rather than. So suggesting that instead they should be making real life connections. And then we have another connective word. We've got the word and there. And this shows the examiner that you're going to add on another idea to the sentence. So they're not making these real life connections and they're not learning how to interact with others effectively. So try to use some connective phrases and connective words to join your ideas together. And you can also use commas for this. So now that we have considered each of the marking criteria, let's think about why this is a good answer overall. It's structured in a really logical way and all of it makes sense to the reader because we've got accurate spelling, we've got the accurate use of punctuation throughout the answer, and all of the grammar is correct. We're also adapting to the audience and purpose that have been set out in the question, and the focus is on the question throughout. There hasn't been any inclusion of any other topics or any irrelevant information. We've got multiple ideas joined together within sentences, and every single paragraph is very clear and makes sense within the answer. We've also got correct formatting in the answer. So we've set it out into paragraphs and we've included this name at the top here, Daryl, to show that we are creating a blog post and the name of the person is at the top there. So now that you've seen a model answer to this question, have a go at writing your own answer. Make sure that you're meeting all of the marking criteria and use this answer for inspiration if you're struggling. After you've finished writing your answer, read it through and check it for any mistakes, and then maybe give it to a friend or a family member so that they can have a read through and see if it all makes sense to them. So overall, this answer is really clear, it makes sense, it flows effectively. We've got the correct formatting being used for a web forum, and we have paragraphs being used effectively throughout the answer. Spelling is accurate throughout, and they've used a range of punctuation correctly, and the writing is extremely appropriate for the audience and purpose that is specified in the question. We've addressed every single point of the question, responded to views on young people and explained opinions. So this answer overall would achieve very high marks, and it's a good idea to try and replicate the kinds of things that we've seen in this answer in your own answers.